Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm your host, the Fanciest Man of Cornwood, and I'm back today with another deck tech. You know what's really difficult to do in a game of Commander? Mill out 3 or more other players. It turns out making your opponents mill over 300 or so cards, assuming you play with other players and enjoy drawing cards, and playing the game you're playing is hard. People don't enjoy getting milled, and while they might tolerate it and even get a chuckle from having half their library in their graveyard, the table always seems to turn on the mill player eventually. So, how do we play this time honored strategy and avoid becoming the target of everyone else at the table? Well, that's where today's commander steps in. Fresh from Duskmorn, the Mindskinner is here to give us explosive, concentrated burst of mill while we bide our time, keep a fully stocked hand, and ramp into the secret weapon of the deck, which is our opponent's graveyards. So, the Mindskinner for 3 blue mana is a legendary enchantment creature, Nightmare. It's a 10-1. The Mindskinner can't be blocked, and if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage and each opponent mills that many cards. Alright, so let's start by taking just a deeper look at the strategy of the deck. So obviously we do want to mill our opponents. We want to make sure that we get their graveyards fully stocked with plenty of targets for what will eventually come into play as permanents, but then also spells that steal those cards from our opponent's graveyards and put them to work for us. We're also going to augment that with plenty of card draw. We're going to augment that with ramp, as we always do, to make sure we have lots of mana around for all the different effects we want to take advantage of. So we're going to start with kind of a deeper dive into the strategy by looking at our clones. These are 2 of the better clones in the deck, but we do have quite a few just to make sure we have as many Mindskinners on the field as possible. We want to be milling out our opponents. We know that they will be trying to get rid of our Mindskinner, so the more copies we have in the field, the more times we can copy those copies and just keep the deck going. First we have Auton Soldier. This is for 4 and 2 blue, an artifact creature alien soldier. It's a 0/0, but you may have Auton Soldier enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it isn't legendary, is an artifact in addition to its other types, and has Myriad. And Myriad, whenever it attacks, is going to make a token copy that's attacking each other player or planeswalker they control, and we're going to exile those tokens at the end of combat. So obviously the Mindskinner being unblockable means Myriad is pretty amazing in the deck. It's just immediately going to come down and be a huge threat to the table. Generally we're not counting on milling out our opponents completely. Obviously the deck can, and if that's the way we went, then we'll take the win. But our other copy or other clones here, such as Irenicus's Vile Duplication for 3 and a blue. This is actually a sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except the token has flying and isn't legendary if that creature is legendary. So our other clones are going to be more of a 1-for-1, and they'll just kind of speed up that ramp clock. Again, give us some protection for one of them being removed or something like that, or our commander being removed, and give us some redundancy to get that mill going. So once we have that mill in place, or once we've milled out a bunch of cards from our opponents, the next thing we want to do is start getting cards in our hand to take advantage of their graveyards and use their cards against them. The 2 I've kind of highlighted here are Flawless Forgery for 3 and 2 blue. This is a sorcery. It has Casualty 3, so as you cast this spell, you can sacrifice a creature with power 3 or greater. When you do, copy the spell, and you can choose a new target for the copy. So the Casualty 3 is really not a problem because most of our creatures in the deck, even the creatures that aren't clones and are just trying to keep our strategy going, will have 3 or more power. There's a few that don't, but for the most part that will be a pretty easy casualty to pull off. The other effect is exile target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard, copy that card, and you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So both of these cards that are highlighted do look for instants and sorceries in the target opponent's graveyards, and a lot of our cards do that. If you play a meta where there's not a lot of spell casting by your opponents, maybe it's more goldfishing and trying to get a bunch of permanents in play, That's okay. There's other ways that you can take this deck. What I would do is just replace, some of these cards with maybe even more mill and lean more into the mill aspect of it. But I prefer this strategy, so that's what we're going to look at today. Our other focused card here is Spelltwine for 5 and a blue. It's a sorcery. Exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard and target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard. Copy those cards, cast the copies if able without paying their mana cost, then exile Spelltwine. So I like this one even better because we get to use a draw spell or maybe even kind of double up on an effect that's stealing spells or permanents from other graveyards. And we can do both of those at once. We can use ours and try to steal a card from an opponent. But you also have other cards here that are trying to accomplish the same thing. I'll point out Grimoire of the Dead because this is a way to not just dump cards if we're drawing a ton of cards anyway. We shouldn't need that one extra card each turn, but also to just target a different type of card from our opponent's graveyards, and that's their creatures. So Grimoire definitely has the possibility of being, just a huge bomb in the deck, and it's nice to have in a mono blue deck. All right, so another sub-theme that I've worked in is just a Spells Matter theme. We have lots of spells in the deck that are trying to draw us cards. We have lots of spells in the deck that are just meant to augment that theft strategy. And then we even have spells that work on kind of both. They'll draw us cards, but then they also have another sub-theme. So I've highlighted here Haughty de Djinn for 1 and 2 blue. That's a creature djinn. It has power star 4 with flying, and Haughty de Djinn's power is equal to the number of instant or sorcery cards in your graveyard, and then those instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So obviously this is just a creature that can get really big. It's something that reduces the cost of those spells that are trying to steal from our opponents, which some of those are higher casting cost spells. So it's nice. And then we also, as you'll see in the next section of card draw, we have a lot of X casting cost spells, and that's because we want this sub-theme going to reduce the cost of our instants and sorceries. All right, and the other card I've highlighted is Mind Splice Apparatus for 3 and a blue. This is an artifact with flash, and at the beginning of your upkeep, put an oil counter on Mind Splice Apparatus. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each oil counter on Mind Splice Apparatus. So this can just sit on our field. It can give us value over time, and the longer that the game goes, which mill decks are kind of notorious for fizzling out and kind of fading. This just gets better and better and reduces our spells cost by even more. All right, let's look at our card draw package next. We have a lot of, again, spells that will draw us cards but also benefit from that spell reduction. We have some couple of cards that want our opponents to have cards in their graveyards, which are perfect for the mill strategy. So I'm going to highlight those. First is Into the Story for 5 and 2 blue. We get an instant. This spell costs 3 less to cast if an opponent has 7 or more cards in their graveyard, and it draws us 4 cards at instant speed. Pretty great for 4 mana, and I think it'll be, obviously quite easy to have an opponent with 7 or more cards in their graveyard. This is one that tends to work out even if, we haven't been able to swing and hit with the Mindskinner or anything like that. And then we also have Visions of Beyond. This is for 1 blue and instant, draw a card. If a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, draw 3 cards instead. So, if we have this in our opening hand and we can get 2 swings in with the Mindskinner, then this just turns into an Ancestral Recall and gives us crazy value by drawing us 3 cards. So for 1 blue mana, that is definitely something we'll take. All right, so the last thing we'll look at is our ramp package. If you have seen one of my previous deck techs, I think I might have gone over Apprentice Wizard already. This is just a mono blue card I love because it's from 4th edition. It's kind of wonky. I don't really see anyone else run it, even in mono blue, to get the ramp. But for 1 and 2 blue, this is a 0/1 wizard. And for a blue and tapping it, you can add 3 to your mana pool. So just a really nice way to get ramp and convert your one blue land that you have into three, for those X spells that draw us cards, for those spells that have really high casting costs that are going to be stealing cards from our opponents' graveyards and things like that. Really solid ramp for the deck, and yeah, just a card I love for mono blue especially. Then we also have Misleading Signpost for 2 and a blue. This is an artifact with flash. When Misleading Signpost enters the battlefield during the Declare Attacker step, you may reselect which player or permanent target attacking creature is attacking. And you can also tap it to add a blue. So just a really fun mana ramp to have at your disposal for blue, and a really interesting way to take a turn that might have been pretty disastrous for you or even someone else at the table, and redirect that to someone else. Play some politics with this card and maybe gain a friend at the table, some way to help you just keep your side of the table safe until you can start having those big turns where you're milling a ton of cards and taking cards from your opponent's graveyards, things like that. So that's the deck, guys. That's the Mindskinner. I've tested it a little bit, and it's just a lot of fun to kind of lay low, seem like you're not too much of a threat because it's unlikely that you're going to get that mill win, and then just start coming out of nowhere and getting your opponent's best spells, getting their best creatures, all of those things. So if you liked the video, feel free to leave a like, give me a subscription, always helps. And then if you wanted to see the decks, I do have a link down there in the bottom left on your screen that takes you to my Architect page, where you can find not just this deck, but any deck that has been featured on the channel thus far. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, and keep playing Commander.